Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to talk about Nicole Kessinger. Okay, so Nicole Kessinger, she's the lover of Chris Watts. Nicole Kessinger is the person that Chris Watts was cheating on before he ended up killing his wife and his children. Okay, and I think she's a very important figure in this murder case because while there's no evidence, there is no evidence. Okay, there's no clear evidence that she actually participated in the murders, and there's no evidence that she actually anticipated the murderers. Okay, now there may be some kind of like circumstantial evidence that may suggest that. Okay, I'm not going to hold an opinion on that, but there's no direct, definitive evidence that just establishes that she was actually participating, anticipating, or directly involved in actually killing anybody. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that, even though I don't know the whole truth. Only Nicole knows the whole truth, and people may find little tiny little shadows or little things and little video like security videos from around the neighborhood, and maybe other like kind of circumstantial evidence, and may come up with theories. Okay, but those are just theories. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's enough for any reasonable person to entertain the possibility that Nicole actually was part of the planning or the anticipation of anybody getting killed. Now let's put it another way. Now, if she had better judgment, okay, could Nicole have not anticipated that it was dangerous to be with a married person? Okay, like with any married person, like when you're involved in any affair with a married person, you're increasing the dangers automatically. Now, did she fail to appreciate that common sense, that she was actually, engaged in a behavior that could predictably cause an escalated risk of, let's say domestic violence for Chris? Okay, well, yeah, I mean, clearly she underestimated and sort of dismissed that risk factor. Okay, because anybody responsible, one of the main reasons it's dangerous to get involved with somebody who's married is you may provoke, you at least you raise the risk that there could end up being, let's say, a blowout in that house, where they're not just going to fight about the husband cheating, but somebody might actually get physical, and you raise the risk of very, like, say, domestic violence or something, maybe not killing, but you it's not smart to be with a married person in that sense, because you are playing with someone else's family, and you are increasing the risk that something really, potentially violent, or just something unnecessary could happen in that family, where there just could be a lot of fighting, and you're going to cause a lot of distress. The other thing too is that Nicole Kessinger knew, I believe, I think there's reason to believe that she knew, and she understood that Shanann Watts was actually pregnant at the time that Chris was having his affair. Okay, so that's another factor, because if I'm, let's say, if I'm a woman and I'm getting involved with a dude, a man who has a pregnant wife, okay, one of the considerations is that there's always a chance of accidentally getting caught. Always. There's always the chance that the husband is going to blurt it out to the wife and let her know that he's got something, or that he wants to leave her, or whatever. In other words, you're getting involved in a situation where you could create a crisis around someone else's pregnancy, which also is a risk factor. Okay, because even if nobody gets killed, even if there's no family violence, even if it doesn't result in a major, like a blowout or whatever in the house, you could still create a situation where the wife finds out about it while she's pregnant, and that could put the pregnancy at risk. Okay, so basically, I I don't think it's saying a lot to take away the fact that maybe Nicole didn't anticipate the murders. Okay, even if she may have, I mean, but I'm just saying, even if we take that off the table, it's already bad enough that she knew that Shanann was pregnant. Okay, so um, so it's not to say that she was. Well, I think we know that Nicole is not completely innocent, but it just really underlines the fact that what she was doing is she was disregarding the rights of another family. Okay, and I'm not going to be so high and mighty, and I'm not going to be so pious and so sanctimonious as to say that anytime you get involved in an adulterous relationship, you are acting like a sociopath, I think that's kind of like exaggerated, you know. I mean, but I'm just saying that to some degree, okay, to some degree, I think given the fact that, you know, it's not the same thing. Like, you know, if Chris had kids that were already in college, and if, you know, the marriage was already kind of, you know, whatever, but Chris had very young children and he had a pregnant wife. Okay. So when you look at that situation, okay, getting involved with a guy like Chris and then knowing that Shanann was pregnant and knowing that he had tiny daughters, like really toddler, you know, very young daughters, I think a lot of people, it would sort of hit them like a shadow, like, gee, like, you know, I'm getting involved in something and I'm sort of increasing the risk factors for this kind of vulnerable family, you know, especially with the pregnancy. So I think, you know, I don't want to sound like some kind of like sanctimonious, you know, kind of like, oh, it's terrible to, you know, I'm not a moralistic person. Like, I don't really care what people do, but I'm just saying that in this particular situation, you know, it's not like I'm not some religious person where I've got like some hang up about, you know, extramarital sex or whatever. But I'm just saying in this case, given this situation and Shanann's pregnancy, you know, and also, you know, the daughters and everything, I think you have to admit that Nicole really was effectively disregarding the rights and the situation of a family. In other words, she really was disregarding their rights. And, you know, that right there, you know, that is some culpability, you know, not to say that she anticipated a murder, but, you know, you have to recognize that. Okay. So already, without even analyzing this, we already know it's problematic as far as Nicole. Okay. And I think Nicole knew this. Okay. I think when you see the police interviews, and this is what I want to talk about, you know, when you look at the police interviews of Nicole and the way she behaved around the police investigation, okay, and all this was videotaped. I mean, so you have these videotaped interviews, you can see her demeanor, you can see her attitude, and you can see that Nicole's got a lot of issues. I mean, Nicole, it's funny, you know, she didn't actually directly kill anybody, but I actually see her as more blatantly like pathological than I think a lot of people I've seen that have actually killed people, you know, where it really stands out. Um, and it's funny because, you know, I don't like to diagnose people. I don't like to suggest that somebody has a personality disorder. But I think when I look at Nicole, you know, and maybe, you know, maybe I won't actually suggest that she necessarily has a diagnosable personality disorder, but she's got a lot of problems. Okay. She's got a lot of problems because it's not just the fact that she disregarded the rights of another family, you know, getting involved with Chris. It's not just that. It's that when she was questioned by the police, her attitude was just off the charts inappropriate. Okay. Just off the charts inappropriate. And I think that even if the police didn't have any evidence to suggest that she was actually an accessory to the murders, okay, even if there was nothing to even suggest that, okay, I think the police let her get away with a lot of very inappropriate kind of behavior in the interviews, unless they were playing along to try to get her to do more. Now, you never know. You know, with the police, you might think, oh, the police was charmed by her, and the police maybe was even attracted to her and sort of allowed her to flirt and all that. But you never know. The police are clever. Maybe they just wanted to get it all on videotape, you know, just in case in the future, if they got more evidence, you know, they'd have that videotape to use against her, you know, so you never know. It may not have been that the cops were that stupid. They may have been actually very smart and just kind of playing along with her to get it all on videotape, because her attitude was I would say it was jaw-droppingly inappropriate. Okay, really, really inappropriate. Okay, and in fact, I would say I think even Chris Watts. I'm sorry. I mean, he's the one that killed, but I think Chris Watts has actually personally suffered more what happened than I think Nicole. You know what I mean? It's funny. Now I know Chris, he's the father and he's the husband, so he should suffer more. But I think Chris Watts has shown more humanity, I think, in this, you know, in the wake of this, than I think Nicole. So even though Nicole didn't anticipate the murder, okay, and I'm not going to say she anticipated the murder. I think when you look at the sort of like the chemistry of the combination of Chris and Nicole, I think if Nicole never entered the picture, I think I think it's possible that Chris may never have committed a crime, any serious crimes in his whole lifetime. Okay, I think Nicole is the part of this that I think has sort of, even though Nicole didn't anticipate what would happen, I think she inserted a toxicity into the Watts family that I think even with all of Chris's defects as a person. Chris is clearly not a perfect, ideal person. But I think if you just took Nicole out of the picture, I have a funny feeling that probably nothing major would have happened in that family, or at least even if a divorce came up under some other circumstance, it wouldn't have happened that way. Okay. So I really, you can't really blame Nicole for her own toxicity. She's probably not even aware of her toxicity. And she had no idea that it would cause Chris to go off the deep end so far. But what I'm saying is the only element that's really out of place in this whole diagram is not necessarily Chris, because Chris may have his issues, but I think it's really Nicole and what she sort of energetically, what she put into that space and what she did to Chris that actually made him become totally a different person and really do something that he would, it wasn't like anything he had ever done in his lifetime. A lot of times when you have a case of like somebody who kills somebody, you can see in the past that there are sort of like things in their history that were sort of leading up to, whatever. And granted, I know, and I'm aware that in Chris's family, there was already a lot of toxicity. Okay. I know that Chris's mom really did not like Shanann. Okay. I'm aware of that. Okay. So I understand that the family structure and the dynamics and the marriage probably were not nearly as good as they wanted to make it seem, in their Facebook posts. And I'm sure Shanann, probably in her denial and her, avoidance of wanting to see, dark things in her life, I think she probably didn't have the ability to see that maybe her marriage wasn't as healthy as she might have wanted to think it was. Okay. So like, I'm aware that the family had issues. Okay. But I just think that the level of toxicity that got inserted into that family dynamic did not even come necessarily from Chris. Okay. I think it came from, it came from Nicole. And granted, it's like almost like a Shakespearean accident, because I don't think Nicole could have anticipated what was actually going to happen. So, so it is really complex. But let's dive into it a little more, because I think that Nicole, even though she didn't anticipate a murder taking place, okay, I think this is almost a case where you almost have to go into like psychoanalysis, okay, because this is all unconscious. I'm sure that Nicole is probably not even conscious of even 20% of this, okay? But I think Nicole may be deep inside, deep down, like unconsciously, maybe didn't want to see people dead, okay? But I think in a subconscious way, I think she wanted to eliminate, okay, Shanann and Chris's domestic life. I don't even think she said that directly to Chris, but I think subconsciously, okay, I really get the feeling just from what I've heard, about how their relationship was, the kind of fights they would get in, because let's face it, what's her name? Nicole did not like being second place in Chris's life. Okay. And it's kind of amazing. I mean, Chris is married and Nicole doesn't like being second place. I mean, you already can see there's some maturity issues. If it's not narcissism, let's just say you got maturity issues going on, because she doesn't have, there's something missing, that she doesn't have that peaceful place to reflect and to really consider how inappropriate it is for her to complain that she's in second place in Chris's life. I mean, it's amazing, but when someone's immature, amazing things can happen, right? I mean, and all of us who are immature, we've all been there. I mean, let's admit it. Those of us who are immature, we've all been in places where, because of our immaturities, we've taken positions in life and we've had irritations and upsets in life that were, not necessarily justified. Okay. And in this case, Nicole was not really justified in complaining that she was in second place in Chris's life, but it's amazing. And so I think she let Chris know that much. Okay. And they had fights about it, but I have this question whether maybe really deeply subconsciously, I think, Nicole saw Shanann and the family, Chris's family, is sort of like a rival group. Okay. And this is deep primal stuff. And this is stuff you wouldn't even know consciously. But I think she saw them as like a competitor. Like, these are like a rival group. Okay. And basically her mindset, like at the subconscious level, was, let's get these people out of the picture. Okay. Let's get these people out of the picture. And I think she was at some level letting Chris know that she wanted to be with him and she wanted to give him a son. She said she wanted to give him his first son. It's funny because when you say something like that, that's a very competitive statement. Okay. And in fact, as we talk about competitive and all this rival stuff, I have to ask the question, because Nicole was so much into bodybuilding, and she was so much into all this weight stuff. And I almost have to wonder if she was taking any testosterone, or if not directly testosterone, if with all her dietary stuff, if she wasn't maybe accidentally maybe high in testosterone. I mean, hey, it's just a question. I don't know that, but whenever you get people that are so heavy into bodybuilding and so heavy into fitness, even if they're not directly using testosterone, you have to ask the question whether that person may have had a high baseline testosterone and maybe didn't even know it, or whether their dietary habits or their athletic bodybuilding habits may have produced an abnormal testosterone. Because it's interesting, you don't, I mean, it's, you do see sometimes in women where they get very territorial and very, very adversarial. But if it gets to like such a high level, you always have to ask the question, like, what's going on with their diet? What's going on with their, let's say, athletic activities, maybe the supplements they're taking. Because, that may have that may have played a part, because both Chris and Nicole both seem to have a very similar psychology, because both, like Nicole, let's be honest, she's not a hot woman. She's not hot. She's into looking hot. She's into trying to be a hot person. But when you really look at the way she talks and the way she really looks, when you kind of unpeel the way she wants to appear, she looks like somebody who would have been a dork in middle and high school, okay? Or at least a dork, or not like a super like popular person. And she probably wanted to be hot, okay? But I think just like with Chris, I think she used artificial means to make herself hot, like excessive dietary, excessive supplements, obsessiveness with excessive exercise. So she could sort of simulate the body of a person who naturally is hot. Okay. And maybe, yeah, I mean, you have to do some exercise to maintain sort of like a perfect hotness. But some people, they're already pretty hot without the exercise. You know what I mean? The exercise just makes them even hotter. But I get the idea that that Nicole probably wasn't really that hot, and that she really had to like get super, super obsessed with dietary and supplements and bodybuilding or working out to sort of simulate being hot. So in a way, she's kind of simulating something that she doesn't really feel is her. You know what I mean? And I get the feeling that Chris was probably not an ugly person, but because he worked a lot and he probably, he's a father and he has just a lot of responsibilities, probably didn't always have the chance to eat as well as he should have. And maybe, like a lot of men, you let your weight go, you're not in the best shape. And so I'll bet you Chris probably felt a little self-conscious about that. And then seeing how Nicole was so into this narcissistic kind of fantasy of hotness, a kind of hotness that she didn't really believe she had naturally. I think she might have pushed Chris's buttons because she's into this almost like narcissistic exaggeration of hotness that has a lot of envy in it, okay, because it comes from a place of not really having it. You know what I mean? So it has sort of an envious chemistry to it. And so it might have provoked Chris, because that's the envy is very infectious. So when envy is part of anything, it has a way of sort of transmitting sort of almost like subliminally, you know what I mean? So it's not overt, but I think the hotness that Nicole was into was probably that kind of like overcompensating hotness that probably infected Chris's insecurities about his own conditioning and maybe being overweight and maybe not being in the best shape. Okay, so I think basically you can't say that a certain amount of envy and a certain amount of toxic overcompensation was sort of in the picture with Nicole, and that sort of even though Chris felt like he was inspired to lose weight and he was inspired to do more push-ups and to have a great body, I think he didn't realize there was an envy in there and sort of a toxicity in that. It wasn't just, I want to feel good about myself and have good self-esteem and just be healthy. It was more like, I have to have a great body, with that kind of toxic, that toxic urgency that he was getting from Nicole. So I think she was not giving him the most healthy form of hotness. It was sort of like an unnatural narcissistic form of hotness. Okay. Sorry about the dogs, guys. They're not my dogs. Apologize for that. Anyway, so So basically, and again, like we have to remember, in terms of Chris's obsession with having like a great body and being super super fit, he was getting that from Nicole. Okay, Nicole was the one that was kind of taking the leadership role in that, and she even admitted to the police that she was like even trying to give Scott like advice on how to manage his diet and how to program whatever his weight loss and whatever. Um, so you see that even in the relationship, Scott was not really the alpha. Again, talk about testosterone. Like again, this is like a major question that I have, and I think it's worth looking into, but it almost looks like Nicole was kind of like the top dog and kind of like the alpha in this relationship, and she was almost using Scott almost like a pet, and that right there, that doesn't seem very healthy. That there's something kind of wrong about that. And it's funny because even though she seemed to be in love with Chris, okay, even though she seemed to be in love with Chris, you get the idea that she was more provoked by the kind of house that he had, the kind of material possessions that he had, the fact that he had a nice family. So it was almost like it was almost coming more from envy about the family that Chris had as opposed to him himself. Okay. And it's almost like she took on the project of a guy that wasn't even really in good shape. And she was sort of helping to coach him to be in better shape. So it's almost like the fundamentals of who she thought Chris was not like he was this great person, but it's almost like he was like a pet, like a project. You know what I mean? So I think narcissistically, I guess, in terms of narcissistic, whatever, I mean, she's just full of all this envy and being attached to someone for the wrong reason. She wasn't with him because she admired him. She was with him because of all these weird envy complexes and all this rival territorial stuff. So it's like the energy behind this relationship was just all wrong, you know? And it wasn't like she would tell her friends, oh, I think this guy's such a nice guy, such a good person. She would tell her friends, oh, he gives me oral sex. It's almost like demeaning of Chris. You know what I mean? It's like she I don't know. I get the feeling that being in a relationship with Nicole probably wouldn't make a man feel very good about himself. I'm going to be honest. I mean, where the thing that most sticks in her mind about how good of a person you are is that you're giving her oral sex and that she's programming your weight loss program or whatever. I mean, I just think the whole thing to me, I see the toxicity coming from her. And I think that Chris was much less sophisticated. And I think, yeah, he had his flaws as a person. And definitely Chris has to answer for his problems for sure. But I think the major toxicities, the major narcissistic, envies and just bizarre territorial rivalries and stuff, that was coming from, I believe, from Nicole, So yeah, and I think whenever you get into major rivalry, okay, you have to understand that deep down subconsciously, okay, there may be desires subconsciously where you really want to eliminate the rival, so that even though she didn't necessarily tell Chris, hey, I want you to eliminate your family, I think effectively he was picking it up subconsciously that she wanted that family eliminated. You see what I mean? So you don't have to say things literally, and you don't even have to be aware consciously. But if deep down inside you have an unconscious desire, you have to be careful because that desire can infect the person you're with. You see what I mean? So I'm going to assume that Nicole never told Chris, hey, I want you to eliminate your family. Okay. Not like that. Not like that. I think she just made it clear to him through her subconscious desire and her rivalry that she did want them eliminated. Okay. Now, Nicole, obviously we can't blame her. I mean, we can't blame her for, like, say, consciously wanting people dead. No, not that. But I think it's possible that subconsciously, like anybody who has a rivalry attitude, you kind of subconsciously want the rival to be eliminated. You see what I mean? So it's in that sense. And I think even though Nicole wasn't aware of exactly what she was playing with, okay, I think Chris picked it up because Chris is apparently kind of like a sponge, and I think we all as humans, we're sponges, and we sometimes pick up all the toxicity of the other person, even if the other person's not aware of it. You see what I mean? So I think that in this case, I think that, Nicole has a lot of toxicity and a lot of weirdness, a lot of very unhealthy dynamics around men and around relationships, like really unhealthy, like not even it almost seems like she doesn't even look for men that are really like for the right reasons. It's almost like, I don't know. I just get the idea that she's not even calibrated to like even want to get into a relationship for the right reason. And I mean, I can't even begin to understand what's, exactly what's wrong with Nicole, but I get the feeling that deep down inside, Nicole doesn't really think of herself as an attractive person. Okay. She doesn't really think of herself as, like say a hot person or even a powerful person, whatever, but she has this way of sort of wanting to dominate people. And she has this thing of wanting to sort of like overcompensate and sort of like overemphasize being something that she's really not, and trying to play the role of a really hot person. And I think it would probably do better for Nicole to suffer the pain of just being a dork, maybe not knowing that she's not the hottest person, and just suffer that, because even though it's painful, that will actually create a much more healthy soul. And if you're not getting into these overcompensations and getting into being a fake person, something that you're not, over time you will attract the right person. And it may not be the most attractive person, but it'll be the person that matches your soul. You know what I mean? And so she missed the opportunity in life, I think, to just be herself, to be dorky, to be uncomfortable with it. And then with time and with patience to find the right person, and not have all the toxicity of her overcompensation and wanting to be something that she's not, okay, which is based on not liking yourself, not accepting yourself, having all that toxicity end up carrying her into relationships where she's just gonna that's gonna get like that's gonna get infected, that's gonna infect the other person. Okay. And so basically nothing good can come out of having, like, say, unresolved issues in yourself and then taking that and exporting that into a relationship. Because obviously, Chris, he had insecurities, sure, but he was okay. He wasn't desperate to not be an overweight, kind of not in shape suburban dude. He was going through life. But then when he encountered this narcissism, around, sort of wanting to, kind of despising, being a dork and wanting to be like extra hot, he sort of picked it up, and he was like a sitting duck for that, you know. And I think deep down inside, he knew that in Nicole's psychology, because her psychology was narcissistic, which means you despise what's ordinary, you despise your real self. He understood that he wouldn't even register as anything positive for Nicole if he didn't start to assume the ideals of her narcissism. You see what I mean? He could feel it, that she would have no approval for him just to be a dweeby, average, nothing person, or at least he picked it up, you know? So we have to be really careful, because when we have toxicities in ourselves, okay, even if we don't understand our own toxicities, okay, other people will pick them up, okay, through just subliminal infection. We infect people, you know what I mean? So, this is something we really need to learn. In this case, the toxicity was Nicole, but instead of her committing the crimes, what she did is she infected someone else with her toxicity, and that other person committed the crime. Okay, that's kind of how I see it, And granted, I'm not saying that Chris is a great person. I'm not saying that he didn't have some risk factors. I'm not saying that he didn't have problems, and in fact he may have actually had some elements of psychopathy already. But a lot of people have elements of psychopathy. Okay, there's a lot of imperfect, flawed people that just live forgettable suburban lives, and just have their families with their problems. Not everybody becomes a family annihilator. Okay, that was very extreme. Okay, and in my opinion, all this toxicity, even though Chris may have had his own toxicity to begin with, I think the toxicity that really made the difference in this case, I think, came from Nicole. Okay, and I think Nicole, even though she sounds very smart, she sounds like a smart person. She sounds like she has like a lot of potential as a person. Okay, but I think maybe where she got off the rails in life, Nicole, is that maybe she had trouble accepting some of the more maybe awkward and dorky parts of herself, and that she didn't just embrace that and just somehow learn to live with the pain, because life is painful, and just learn to accept who she was and just kind of sit in the discomfort of it and just let life bring you what it's going to bring you. It takes more patience, more maturity, but I think that would have been much better for Nicole. And in the end, she probably could have had a much happier life and enjoyed her intelligence, because she seems like a very intelligent person, but she fell into narcissism. And this is a case where I don't like to accuse people of narcissism, but this, you can see it. She fell into it, and I think it infected Chris. So that's my analysis of Nicole. Thanks for watching.